another pop culture icon
Oh yeah,
as a D&D character.
and that would be the one, the only Darth Vader.
Yeah, we've created Batman in the past. We've already created Darth Vader last week.
Unfortunately, we had some technical difficulties.
We did. So we have them all created, ready for you guys to check out. But we'll sort of take you step by step and show you how we created Darth Vader as a 5th level, 5th edition D&D character. Now, we set out a couple ground rules. What are those ground rules, Ian?
We're going to 5th level. That is the cap. Even though you could say Darth Vader is very well a 20th level character,
Yeah.
we're just trying to make him feasible to actually play.
Right. This makes sure that you could bring this character if you wanted to, and this character sheet will be up sometime in the future once the VOD is up, into your D&D game if you really wanted to.
Yeah, you could take him and slap him down right in your game. Another thing is he won't have all of Darth Vader's powers, but he will be a D&D character that really resembles Darth Vader.
Yeah, exactly. That's the goal, really. It's not going to be a perfect recreation, but it's going to be a D&D character with a lot of the flavor of Darth Vader, that dark flavor.
And finally, our last real limiter that we put on these characters is that we use the standard array as found in the player's handbook.
Yeah, I mean, we essentially take the sort of build a character guide from the D&D player's handbook and build Darth Vader. Now, to give Darth Vader some of those, some of that flavor he's known for.
Oh yeah.
We've listed out some of his key attributes.
So we really wanted to focus in on these attributes being his lightsaber.
He goes everywhere with that thing, right?
Yeah, there's it's just part of his imagery. It is his primary weapon. He is a dude that is a sword master with a freaking awesome lightsaber.
Yeah, he worked hard to get that lightsaber. He slaughtered a lot of younglings to get that red lightsaber. Up next, of course, another key part of being a Jedi or Sith.
It's his force powers. He needs to be able to use what is magic in the D&D to do some abilities that very well replicate stuff you've seen in Star Wars, like Force Choke or the telekinesis kind of moves they do where they lift very heavy objects, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and some of those force powers sort of sub-listed as telekinesis and telepathy, also used as like suggestion.
Yes.
Stuff like that.
Jedi mind trick.
Yeah, you'll see it as it comes through in the character sheet we've built. And
finally,
he's the Empire's war dog, basically, right?
Yeah, and when people see him, they run. Specifically, we mentioned in the previous video where we did this, the scene from Rogue One, where all of the rebels are running from him in the hallway. When he is walking slowly towards you, you run away.
Yeah, he's incredibly intimidating, very scary. So I want to thank you guys for joining us. I think we're pretty much ready to get into the actual character sheet. Now, in the past, we've done it step by step. We currently have him built out already, but we'll take you through sort of our process for building Darth Vader as a 5th level D&D character.
One final thing before we really get rolling with how we built Darth Vader. If you really like this video, make sure to comment on it and share it and like it if you're watching it on YouTube, and comment some characters you'd like us to make, because we'd be really happy to turn other pop culture characters that you want to see into 5th level characters.
Yeah, we've got some ideas in mind, but we definitely want to, we'll take some suggestions if you have any.
Put them on the list.
Alright, so
the character sheet.
So yes, Darth Vader. Here he is.
Yes, he is. We'll just start with the very obvious stuff you see at the top there. He is a Hexblade Warlock.
Mm-hmm.
We chose Warlock because they seem to have very dark side powers innately. And we chose Hexblade because it really focuses in on the magic of his weapon, which obviously lightsabers are pretty magical.
Yeah, and that's going to check off that lightsaber, as you'll see in just a bit here. So we got him up to level 5. You know that we'll come back to that in just a minute. Background?
He is an acolyte. We decided pretty well and firmly that Darth Vader, being a student of the Jedi and then a student of the Sith, and that is kind of a religion of its own.
Definitely.
It's referred to as a religion by other Empire lieutenants and whatnot, and so we determined that he is an acolyte.
Now, we went with standard human. I'm very much looking forward to building a pop culture icon who's not a standard human.
Yes.
But it just seemed to make the most sense for the man once known as Anakin.
Yeah, he really is a human. Among the variety of species you can find in Star Wars, that's as human as it gets.
yeah, exactly. And this was some debate, but I think we came to a consensus on alignment.
this Darth Vader that we're portraying here is lawful evil.
Yeah, this state of Darth Vader. Anakin himself goes through many different alignments, I think, throughout the...
He's a pretty good example of alignment change.
Mm-hmm.
But when you do see those charts online and whatnot, the charts that show off the alignments, usually in the bottom right corner you have Darth Vader, lawful evil.
Exactly. So that sort of takes care of his base being, but to give him some flavor, we'll move on to attributes, I think.
Yes, so we use the standard array, as we said at the beginning of the show. That's how we keep things even and potentially someday have a really cool battle royale that doesn't have one character way too overpowered. At some point coming up anyway. But let's look at where we put his highest attributes.
Yeah, so we felt to really check off that intimidation from our key attributes list here.
Yep.
We gave Darth Vader quite a high charisma. Now, you might be thinking, Darth Vader doesn't come across as particularly friendly or charismatic.
No.
But that's not really the angle.
No, now, and specifically in 5th edition, they describe charisma as also just being force of will, and there's no doubt that when Darth Vader is sitting around the table with all the other Galactic Empire leaders, if he speaks up, people listen.
Yeah, he commands attention, and that's because, and that's reflected in his charisma score. Originally it was 16, which was using the standard array, highest value of 15, adding the 1 for him being a human, and it's
once he reached 4th level, we gave him the extra 2 straight into charisma from his attribute bonus.
Now he's sitting pretty at 18.
Yeah.
Next couple highest.
We gave him a relatively high strength. This is due to just his straight-up combat finesse, his abilities to overpower people in melee combat.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much his whole, his lightsaber duel tactic is just to swing through you, basically. Yep. So we felt strength, him being a Hexblade Warlock, a more melee-focused caster class, strength would definitely come in handy.
Next up, we decided he needed to be pretty damn tough. You've seen Darth Vader pretty beat up. We've also seen, in the most recent issue of Darth Vader 18 of the current Marvel run, which you can get here at the Freakopolis Geekery, has Tarkin hunting down Darth Vader. And at one point, during this hunt, he sends his men in with slug throwers, which are like our classic weaponry on Earth. Not blasters, because it's very hard to deflect. Darth Vader gets shot to hell and still kills all those people.
I believe it.
He is tough.
Yeah, he's definitely tough. And, if his toughness fails him, he's got that back tank to fall back on and heal up. And he does that pretty quickly, so
that's our reasoning for a 14 Constitution.
Which gives him a +2. Then we're down to sort of a +1 intelligence. He's not, unintelligent, but it's not a remarkable trait of his.
Yeah.
Same with wisdom, sitting at 11.
This one we had a long discussion on what his wisdom would end up being, and the truth is a warlock leans more towards charisma and constitution and those stats, and we looked kind of at what Darth Vader's behaviors are, and the truth is he's very impulsive, so his wisdom ended up being not quite as high as one might expect.
No, I think that, his wisdom being sort of average is why he ended up becoming Darth Vader to a certain degree, he wasn't able to see through Emperor Palpatine's sort of disguises and stuff. So finally, his sort of dump stat, if you will, dexterity at a 9.
He is not known for his speed in particular.
No, not at all. He's not like Obi-Wan who's jumping and leaping and flipping. He tends to be more slow and steady, just a force to be reckoned with that will catch up to you eventually.
Yeah. But, based on the standard array, we had to give him one weak stat, and that ended up being dexterity.
Seemed like dexterity was the right fit.
So let's look at his saving throws. Right up there. Boom. So he is proficient as a warlock in wisdom and charisma, which leaves him at a hefty +7 charisma saving throw. He is a difficult guy to charm.
Now that he's at level 5, of course.
Yes.
To begin with, it would be +5. But at level 5... he ends up with a +7 charisma.
Yep, his proficiency bonus goes up +1, and his charisma bonus also goes up with another +1.
He's also not bad in wisdom, just from the fact that he's got that proficiency bonus in it.
Yep.
Unfortunately, some of the other ones not looking so pretty. Let's take a look at skills.
Skills.
So you gain proficiency in skills from your class and your background.
Warlocks don't end up with a huge amount of skills.
No. There's like 4 to choose from.
Yep. Including their background, which kind of already knocks out 2. So,
especially when you do Acolyte, which has a very similar skill list.
Yep.
But we ended up going with, first he has proficiency in
Arcana. And that one we had a big discussion on as well. Why is he proficient in Arcana? Well, it's a D&D world. You're putting this Darth Vader into it. It's not quite the Star Wars galaxy. So he probably would have studied up on magical items and runes and stuff. And that's a lot of what, the Sith are about, is hunting down those ancient relics of the Sith, at least in the expanded stories and whatnot.
Definitely. Up next, Darth Vader. Our Darth Vader has proficiency in Insight.
Insight. He speaks with a lot of people on a high scale. Like when he's talking to people, usually it's power plays and stuff.
Definitely, yeah. That's sort of his MO on the Death Star and stuff. He's maintaining his position. He's seeing who's trying to sort of rat him out or work around him. Especially even when he captures our heroes. He's not going to be tricked by them and stuff like that. So Insight seemed like a solid choice.
Finally, he is sitting at a hefty +7 to Intimidation, which is one of our listed key attributes. Like we described with his Charisma saves ending up being a +7, it started at a +5, but at level 4, his attribute bonus into Charisma gives him another +1 there, and at level 4, he also gets his Proficiency bonus increase. Or is that 5 where that happens?
I think it's 5.
Yes, level 5, you get your Proficiency bonus, which is just all around the board, whatever you're trained in bonus.
So we're definitely checking off that Intimidation.
Yeah, he's scary.
Yeah, super scary. Just from skills and attributes alone. And then finally,
Religion. Being a Sith or a Jedi is a religion.
Yeah, you grow up in that, you spend a ton of time in that. He was a Master Jedi, so he's competent in the religion of his universe anyways. And it probably, analogs over to the D&D universe.
Yeah, I think it translates.
Fine, yeah.
All right, where are we moving on to next?
Let's just keep going down this side of the character sheet.
Okay.
So we have some proficiencies.
Yeah, he because he chooses to be a Hexblade Warlock, he becomes much more martially proficient than your average Warlock, being capable of wearing medium armor, using martial weapons and shields.
Yep. And he also gets a couple language proficiencies just from being, I think, a human.
Yep.
And maybe from being an acolyte. Unfortunately, we didn't find any real good languages that translate between the two universes. So at the moment, he speaks Common.
Yeah, you can
I think
choose.
we said Abyssal too or something just to make it fun.
But yeah, it's hard to pick the languages with these pop culture characters. Usually they don't really translate over too well. But if you slap this character down in your game, then feel free to choose some bonus languages.
Right. All right, so moving to sort of the middle column.
Yeah, he ends up with a 14 armor class, and this is because the armor we gave him was scale mail, I believe.
I believe it was, yeah. Which is, a pretty medium, sort of middle-of-the-road armor, which seems appropriate for Darth Vader, given his set of clothing he's iconically wears.
Yeah, he's definitely wearing armor, but it doesn't look like Knight's plate or anything like that.
No, I mean, you can see the soft parts on his arms and legs and stuff.
And I had mentioned in our previous video that Darth Vader was heavily inspired by a samurai look. Samurai traditionally wear stuff that is very close to splint armor.
Definitely. And unfortunately, though, he ends up at 14 as he's at a -1 dexterity. So he takes a little hit there. He won't be the hardest to hit, but luckily he's got 50 hit points.
Yeah, he ends up with 50 hit points, a +2 on Constitution, and a D8 per level in Warlock.
That's sort of taking max hit points.
Yeah, that's what we're going to do for these guys. They have 50 hit points.
Which will make them a little hardier than your average D&D character, but, it's not like they have 30 Constitution.
No. Which is, coincidentally, exactly what Batman ended up like.
At 50, yeah.
Yeah, I wonder who would end up winning.
Ooh, we might have to find that out sometime.
Yeah.
-1 initiative, 30
Slow to
base
react.
speed.
Yeah, he really doesn't... at least this character doesn't jump into the fight too quickly, but you know what? For Darth Vader, it's all about how much damage he can do once he's in there.
Definitely. All right, continuing down, hit dice pretty average.
Yep.
He has a dagger, but his real, the star of Darth Vader and this Hexblade Warlock is what we're calling his lightsaber.
Yes.
It really is, I believe, a longsword, right?
Yes, it acts as a
Modeled after
longsword that he creates as his Hexblade, which gives it a variety of really cool bonuses.
Which we'll get to
Soon
just
enough.
a bit.
Yeah. So specifically, he gets to add his proficiency bonus to damage as well. So he ends up with a +7 to hit, and then on hit he does 1d10. I thought +7 damage. It should be. Yeah.
Adjust it. 1d10 plus
7.
I think that's,
He also gets to use charisma on his attacks as his attribute, whereas normally almost everyone who is using a melee weapon is either using dexterity with finesse weapons or strength with pretty much everything else. Darth Vader gets to use his charisma as his primary mode of attack, which is pretty crazy.
nice. I think that should be good now. 1d10 plus 7.
Yeah, that looks right.
Nice. So yeah, and there's some other things that make it more lightsabery in his class abilities, which we will get to in just a second.
But just so you know, it is very deadly. A +7 on damage is pretty nasty.
It's pretty nuts. So he has some standard starting gear for what was a first level character until we leveled him up.
Yep. We also see a few of the magic items that we gave him to round out some of those key attributes, specifically his force powers of telepathy and telekinesis. Not that he doesn't have other cool force powers, we'll get to his spell list soon, but to really fill it out, we give him a few magic items. And so he ends up with a helm of telepathy.
And a classic helmet.
Yeah.
He had to have some kind of magical helm.
Definitely. There's no way to ignore that. That's a huge part of his image. And then a ring of telekinesis, a little more subtle, but definitely lets him get off those force moves like when Yoda is fighting Count Dooku in the prequels, and they just grab these many ton chunks of steel and throw them all around and stuff.
Yeah. Telekinesis is very strong in D&D.
It is.
But appropriate, I think, for... This is a very powerful magic item. But one of, like, sort of 5th level strength, I think.
You want to go into exactly what the limitations on those are before we continue along?
If you'd like to, yeah.
I remember, so the Helm of Telepathy you can use to read sense thoughts of people around you on a DC 13 save. I think it's a wisdom save. And then if you succeed on the sense thoughts, you can use another action to cast suggestion, which causes another save just like that, but suggestion is pretty damn powerful.
Yeah.
And that's a very kind of Sith mind drill thing to do.
Right.
And then the Ring of Telepathy, or the Ring of Telekinesis, allows you to move objects up to 1,000 pounds from a distance.
Which is a lot of weight.
Funnily enough, one other qualifier on that ring is you cannot pull weapons out of people's hands, which is so true because you never see that happen to Jedi and Sith in Star Wars. They pull the weapon to them, but they never use the Force to just rip them out of their hands in the middle of combat. Anyway.
Yeah, no, it never happens.
Yeah.
So,
it's like an unspoken rule.
So there's some of his hit points and things of that nature. Attacks, that main lightsaber attack, checks off that lightsaber key attribute we talked about.
It does have additional properties that make it even more lightsabery, though.
It does. As well as some equipment and magical items we thought we would give him to create some interesting flavor to our Darth Vader. Now, can you read this?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, so moving on to some of his background stuff, like personality, flaws, bonds, ideals.
And these we talked over for a long time, looking at every option in the book, but I think we'll just talk about what we ended up on and why. So his personality traits is I am intolerant of other faiths and respect or condemn the worship of other gods. And this is a little broad because it needs to be a little D&D-ish, but when Darth Vader is judged for being a Sith, he does not take well to it.
No, not a huge fan of... he condemns a lot of people in the Star Wars universe.
Yeah.
Nice. Moving on to ideals.
Aspiration. I seek to prove myself worthy of my God's favor by matching my actions against his or her teachings.
It's not quite God's, maybe Master's teachings.
Yeah, he definitely devotes himself to Palpatine and his will, and therefore it's kind of, it's as close as we can make it. Master's teachings.
There we go.
Yeah, perfect.
his bonds.
I will someday get revenge on the corrupt temple hierarchy that branded me a heretic.
Pretty much check that off.
Yeah, that is a key part of the Darth Vader story.
Yeah, late in Return of the Sith, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. He takes out the whole temple, really.
Yeah.
And then finally his flaw.
My piety sometimes leads me to blindly trust those that profess faith in my God. That is his relationship with Palpatine and how he became Darth Vader. He was pretty much misled.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. And that's why he's got such low wisdom.
Yep. Now we'll move on to his class attributes.
Yeah.
So, weirdly enough, he gets Shelter of the Faithful by being an acolyte.
Yeah, that essentially means he's welcome in any places of his faith. We also thought we would extend that to Imperial locations.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to turn away Darth Vader from any Empire stronghold.
Yeah, outposts, anything like that, he's going to be welcome there.
Yeah.
Next up, he has Hex Warrior from his...
Hexblade Warlock.
Yeah, being a Hexblade Warlock, and that allows him to get his Charisma modifier on his attacks.
Which is huge. He's got a +4.
Yeah, as a 5th level character with a +7 to hit, +7 to damage, that is pretty nasty. Then he gets a sweet ability called Hexblade's Curse, and this is when Darth Vader focuses down on one target and tears him to shreds.
Yeah.
So it gives him, as a bonus action in combat, within a range of 30 feet, he gets plus proficiencies to his damage. So you have to use the curse to get the +7, otherwise it's still standardly +4. Okay, so we had it right in the beginning. But you get your proficiency bonus to damage. You crit on a 19 or 20. That's a 10% chance to lay down a ton of extra damage. If the cursed target dies, gain HP equal to your Warlock level plus Charisma. So if he kills someone while they're cursed with this, he gets a full 9 HP back. That's like a 5th of his health.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah.
And he's getting those last blows, you know it. Alright, cool. Eldritch Invocations. So you pick a few of these as you level up a Warlock. We ended up going with these ones.
And these ones, we particularly picked ones that would kind of replicate Force Push, the move you see them pull pretty often.
His Eldritch Blast is sort of, it does force damage anyways.
Does force damage,
Yeah.
so it's pretty appropriate. And yeah, it's just, an invisible push. And so he has Repelling Blast, which really gives him the push. When it hits, you push a creature 10 feet directly away from you. Mm-hmm. That's pretty nice. Agonizing Blast allows him to dish out a bunch of extra damage with it when Darth Vader does this.
+4.
It's pretty concussive. It hits you hard. And Thirsting Blade, this one is pretty nasty. When he makes a melee attack, he can make an extra melee attack. Normally not a feature available to Warlocks. Usually only the most martial of classes.
Yeah, it mimics stuff that fighters and paladins get, which is extra attack. And Rangers, I believe, at 5th level. So not bad for an invocation.
No, yeah, to just be able to pick that up along with the other things, his boons to his Eldritch Blast, makes for a pretty good skill set.
So not only is his, what do they call the Hexblade? It's the Patron.
Yes, his
patron is a Hexblade, but he's also a Pact of the Blade Warlock, so he's really focused around that lightsaber.
Yeah, and so being a Pact of the Blade Warlock, he can use an action to create a pact weapon in your hand. That is the lightsaber extending. That is that action, and we really wanted to make sure that we had that down as part of his abilities.
Yeah, and it gives him, means he can't really ever be disarmed.
No.
Because he can create a blade in his hand, and his blade is magical. So,
yes, so he can do damage to pretty much everyone and anything. And he can also turn it off at will.
Mm-hmm.
So if he drops it, there's no reason anyone can pick it up.
Right, exactly. It's his saber.
Mm-hmm.
So that pretty much takes care of his forward-facing character sheet, attributes, background, things of that nature. But we still have some spells yet.
Yeah.
As Warlocks are spellcasters.
Yes, they are. So
they're a little funky, but they get some cool spells.
Yeah, Warlocks get a pretty limited spell list, and in fact, Darth Vader has 3 known cantrips, 6 known spells. He gets to cast 2 spells at 3rd level every day.
Right.
So when he uses one of these spells that aren't cantrips that we list off, he uses them in a very powerful way, but he can only do those twice.
Really focuses on those cantrips the Warlocks do.
Yeah. So you end up with True Strike. You use an action, and you get an advantage on attacking a foe that you target.
So it's really just him being so proficient and deadly with his lightsaber.
Eldritch Blast has a range of 120 feet. At 5th level, he shoots 2 Eldritch Blasts, each dealing 1d10 plus 4 damage, and they push you back 10 feet. That is, honestly, Darth Vader in the back lines is scary as
just
well.
as nasty as him being up front. Yeah, sort of the bread and butter of warlocks, really. But he's got some options at range and in melee.
And finally, Blade Ward for cantrips, which is you take an action to make yourself resistant against piercing, slashing, and bludgeoning damage, which are all the standard types of melee and generally range damage as well that you'll find. All non-magical types he becomes resistant to and cuts that damage in half, which is his really super tough ability to just last through combat. Next,
finally, we move on to some of the things that we'll be using as resources a little bit.
Yeah.
No longer cantrips, but first and second level spells.
He has command. You speak a word or a very short phrase like "run," and if the person fails their save, they do it.
People are going to do that, and he's using his charisma to cast these
Yes.
things, so he's a pretty proficient caster.
Which I think also lends to our intimidation key attribute, the fact that when he commands people and when he speaks to them, they listen.
They're going to listen. Which makes it also represents some of his rank inside the Empire.
Yes. We gave him Wrathful Smite. He needs to be able to dish out the damage in close combat. I believe at 3rd level that would do an additional 3d6 plus something damage, and if they failed the save, after he gets a successful hit with this ability, they become afraid of him and run away as fast as they can.
Yeah, it's pretty nasty. Up next,
Shield. Shield gives you, I think, a +2 to AC, is that it?
I believe it does, yeah.
It's a pretty straightforward spell. Another additional cool little thing that it does is make you immune to the spell Magic Missile, which is
very much like a blaster rifle fire.
Yeah, exactly. So we kind of took that flavor and really enjoyed the fact that
Magic Missile always hits.
Blaster
never
hits.
But yeah, it's a little bit like just being able to hold those bolts or deflect them with his lightsaber or something like that.
Yeah, Branding Smite, another really powerful melee attack.
Which I think does radiant damage.
Yep.
It is a lightsaber.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. I think it would do an additional 3d8, and also there's another save ability attached to that one, but I can't particularly remember it at the moment. He has Whole Person. This is your classic, not quite dealing the damage like Force Choke would, but definitely holding them right in place like Force Choke does.
You're going to be the center of their attention.
Yeah, so they make a save. If they fail, they are stuck right where they're at.
And finally,
Counterspell. He needs to be able to, react to other spellcasters in this world, and a Force user, kind of Force versus Force user battles are all about Counterspell.
Yeah, absolutely. And that pretty much rounds out our 5th level Darth Vader.
Yeah.
But we'll run through it again real quick. Make sure we checked off these key attributes. I think Lightsaber. Check.
Yeah, he uses his sword like a maniac.
Between his Hexblade and Blade of the...
Pact of the Blade.
Pact of the Blade.
Both those give awesome melee attributes.
Great use of Lightsaber. Force powers.
His spell list covers a lot of them, and we also threw in a Helm of Telepathy and a Ring of Telekinesis for some of the visual flavor, as well as to focus in on some of the stuff that we've seen Jedi and Sith do in the past.
And finally, Intimidation.
He is more than proficient in Intimidation with a +7, and with abilities like Command, he will be able to definitely impose his will on other people.
He will. He'll be very, very scary. So that does it for our building Darth Vader as a 5th level D&D character. Thanks so much for joining us, guys. We're hoping to do this pretty much every Saturday night, starting at around 6 or 7 or 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. If you have any ideas for who we should make next, leave them in the comments. And until next time,
Catch you later.